Hello. In this video, I wanted to talk about my different social hurdles, I guess you could say, and experiences. I know a lot of this stuff is like taboo or like is like a touchy subject. With biracials, there's this whole like political aspect. Like, oh, biracials will bring people together and end racism, and they have this side job where they need to use their privilege to, you know, help the black community, to benefit the black community. And, it's like, to me, that's usury, that's dehumanization. Like, I'm not some drone that you can like program to be a certain way or whatever. All you're doing is creating a different race of people. Um, Individuals that have their own beliefs, opinions, and viewpoints, goals, and desires in life. Other times people will be like, why do you talk about race? Why do you focus on race? Race doesn't matter, that type of thing. Well, race does matter. For me, it's been a big part of my life, a part of my identity, not because I want it to be, but because it just is. And people focus on that aspect. Other people bring it about, intentionally or not. I got a comment on one of my videos. It was from a mixed race person. I think they were saying they were half white and Indian and half black. They were basically like saying, oh, well, my experience with white people hasn't been as positive as yours. They were saying that they find white people harder to relate to because they seem colorblind, and they found, other races. I think they're saying African Americans specifically. I think they're saying that they found them easier to relate to. And yeah, I do generally agree with that sentiment. Like, I've seen it where white people are very nonchalant about race, and, that can be seen as a positive thing. Like, I don't think they have any bad intentions, but it can also feel like it's like belittling or like undermining your experience, because race can, play a big role in your life and experiences. The truth is, race does have an effect, and it can have an effect, and there's quite a few ways people can be affected. So, yeah, I've seen people talk about having biracial kids, and they'll have this idea of like, kids are kids, no big deal. You can just raise them up whichever which way. You don't need to discuss or talk to them about anything. To me, doesn't seem quite right. So, yeah, there have been studies that have been done that have shown that biracial individuals are more susceptible to mental health issues. So, what is that related to? It's related to race, their dual identity. So, that's race affecting them. And then you have mental health professionals who may not understand or be familiar with the challenges or issues that we face, or they kind of make light of them. I've also seen where people will want to bring up their biracial children in like a political way, and like push more of a black identity for them. I don't know. I can understand people wanting to raise their kids a certain way, but I don't know. To me, that kind of seems like grooming, but yeah, I guess it depends. But yeah, I've kind of had it where my mom try to have me more of a black identity, and she thought I would have like more black interests or whatever, and I didn't really appreciate it. Like, I could see if um, a biracial child is naturally gravitating towards that, but to me it's like, I'm not black, so why are you doing that? Like, I'm half of something else. So to me it just came off as weird. I wasn't raised in any sort of political way, but as far as like the black identity being like pushed on me, or me being pushed more towards a black identity, I didn't really appreciate. um People talk about colorism, privilege, racism, that type of stuff, political stuff. I think that sort of thing is hard to measure, and I've talked about it so many times before. A lot of the time people will claim racism, colorism, but when they get into it, it doesn't really seem like it's something that's a big deal or that should have much of an effect. Other times it's like something that someone did or said, and I think sometimes they'll be like mishearing or misconstruing. Some people will be like mentally ill or delusional. So to me, it's kind of hard to go off of that. But yeah, I find I relate better to people of color over white people generally. But, it depends, because I find some white people very relatable. And then sometimes, I'll find like Africans, like pure Africans, I'll find them different and unrelatable. I guess I relate better to those of us who are in between like the main racial groups. Like, I relate better to like Middle Easterners, Latinas, African Americans. I guess our like genome is kind of in between, more than Europeans, like someone from Britain or Sweden, East Asians, or Africans. And, I was thinking, like, back when I was a kid, I related to other kids fine. Like, race wasn't really a factor. So I was thinking, like, when did this start? So I think it was around college, around that time, late teens, college years. I started to find white women and East Asian women in particular more unrelatable. With guys, it's not as much. I do find some white guys, some East Asian guys unrelatable, but it's usually not as much or to the degree as the women. I'm not quite sure why that is. Maybe because, I'm a woman, so I'm interacting with women more. I'm more interested in like female spaces, that type of thing. That could be it. But I think the other thing is like around that time, people start getting more interested in like the opposite sex. Like, I noticed that like white women can be pretty like male-centered. They start getting into finding a guy and starting a family. East Asian women as well. Like, maybe that's a part of it, because I had one of my friends. She was Mexican. Like, we related to each other really well. Then she was in a relationship with a guy. It was still going good, but then she got married, and then it was like, what the heck happened? Then I found her like unrelatable, at the time. So it's like, married people to me, they like are like a different species, I found at the time. So maybe that has something to do with it, because also, I found like with white women, like I relate fine to white women who are more like feminist, you know, they more so center like themselves. They're not like male centered, male identified, whatever you want to call it, you know, that type of thing. But yeah, I relate fine to African American women and African Americans in general who are mainstream and not a part of hood culture or whatever you want to call it. But like, it's on like an auntie basis. Like, I don't think, I haven't had a close friend who has been black or white since I've been an adult. Like, I've had Eastern European friends. Like, I've had a Ukrainian friend, I had a Russian friend, but they seem like a bit different to me than from like Scandinavians and Western Europeans. So, yeah, I don't know. I just find them more like relatable. There's not as much as like this sort of cultural barrier. But yeah, as far as, you know, who I've been able to get closest with, it's definitely been Latinos, you know, Hispanics, Middle Easterners, and then, yeah, some Eastern Europeans. You know, I was thinking back to when I was a kid, you know, I had East Asian friends, South Asian friends, white friends, black friends. Like, there wasn't any like barrier. There wasn't like any cultural barrier or anything like that. And I'm trying to think why that is. I don't know if that's just like the nature of kids, you know, yeah, as an adult, it's different, you know. It feels different for me. It seems like it feels different on, you know, the other side as well, person to person. There's also, as you probably know, the issue with identity with biracials. Like, are you white? Are you black? You're black, black, black. And I can kind of get, you know, different points of views, but to me it's like, I always thought, you know, I'm mixed. Like, why are you making it a problem? To me, you know, with black people who kind of want to have biracials identify with black, um, you know, I kind of get this sense like there's a few different reasons for that, you know. Um, like, you could look at it like, well, they're trying to be accepting of you, you know, so that you have a place where you can belong to and that kind of thing, which is fine and well. But the other part of that, it's like, it seems like it's a little bit off-putting, you know, honestly. It's like, it comes off as not completely sincere. You know what I mean? Sometimes it might be a thing where, you know, they admire biracials. Like, maybe when they were a kid growing up, they thought, oh, like, oh, I want to look like her, or, you know, I wish I were biracial, you know, that kind of thing. Which, I mean, that doesn't really bother me, you know. I mean, it's like maybe like an admiration thing or wanting to fit in with the larger white society. Like, maybe they have the idea that biracials are more able to do, you know. But yeah, that's just a little bit, you know, sad. Like, I feel a little bit sad for the person feeling that way. Like, you know, but, you know, it doesn't bother me if they want to feel that way. But it's kind of like, oh, why can't you accept yourself and see yourself as good enough, you know, that type of thing. But the other way that kind of comes off, it's like you're kind of like devaluing blackness if you're trying to, you know, give that identity to anyone who might fit in it, you know what I mean, or who wants to fit in it. You know, I was watching another YouTuber and they were saying like, you don't give something away that you value. I'm like, yeah, that rang true to me. Like, that's kind of the sense that I get with that. Like, why are you just giving, anyone your identity? Like, And the main thing with the black identity, why people think biracials should take on the black identity, is, they'll say, you'll be seen as black. I don't think that's usually true. I think that biracials are usually seen as biracial. I think there are some people who will mostly focus on their blackness, though. And I think sometimes there are biracials who seem black or who seem white. If you identify away from the one drop rule, then it's like something's wrong. Like, you don't want to identify with blackness or black people. White people won't accept you. You need to come in the black group. Like, there's some racial hierarchy. To me, racial hierarchy is not the right way to view things. Racial hierarchy that many people buy into. People base it on white supremacy or IQ. As far as IQ, I think that has some merit to it, but there's different things that can affect IQ. Maybe you didn't grow up with the best nutrition. Maybe you didn't grow up with the best upbringing. Maybe you didn't grow up in the best environment. Maybe you have depression or a mental health issue. There's different things. There's, a lot of things that can affect IQ. Maybe you come from a culture that values different things other than, education, competition, that sort of thing. Maybe you didn't get the best education, but, based on that, it would be East Asians who are at the top of the hierarchy. So, how do, white people often find themselves at the top of this racial hierarchy? Does it have to do with, lookism, or does it have to do with more liberal Western values, that type of thing? Nazi Germany was not superior. World War II Europe was not superior. Imperial Japan, communist North Korea, in East Asia, they put a lot of value on education, work ethic. Other cultures may value spirituality or being peaceful or family get-together entertainment. I don't know. But China has one of the highest IQs, but they are just now emerging as a global power, whereas previously, of the industrial age, they were a second world country, developing country, whatever, the correct term is. But, if you look at history, the first empires, civilization, were in Asia and the Mediterranean region. Now, Western Europe basically dominates, and some people will say this is due to colonization and that sort of thing. And yeah, I think working with different regions of the world, with different people from different regions to your benefit has to do with it. In ancient times, Asia and the Mediterranean region benefited much more from this, from trade between different regions and sharing of ideas between different regions, and they surpassed Western Europe as far as human development. So, I mean, this talk of racial hierarchy and superiority, I think it's relative in those sorts of ways. You know what I don't like? I don't like how people have this idea. People assume that everyone has the same issues when we all have different things to overcome. There are different types of people. This like rigid thinking that like everything is based on nature. Like there's a natural explanation for everything. It can all go back to some origin and it's the same for everyone. Like, no, there's so many different ways anything can manifest. With biracials, it would make sense if we all couldn't relate to each other because, well, we all don't come out looking the same. I try to understand different perspectives and different outlooks. Um, I have a personality where I can relate to basically anyone and I can get along with basically anyone and things of that nature. I'm also very open-minded and things of that nature as well. I'm more of an introverted type, but I'm generally outgoing. I've never had issues with meeting new people. Childhood, elementary school, like I was saying, I felt like I got along with pretty much anyone, you know. Race was not a factor at all. Before hormones, competition, whatever else. I've had it where people will think I'm some sweet, perfect angel or something like that, with adults and other kids, like in my childhood and adolescent years. Like in elementary school, people would have this idea that like everyone likes me. Like I remember this one time in third grade, there was this one girl that was having an issue, like she was having some problem with me or something like that. I guess she was saying like, oh, she doesn't like me or something like that. And then this other girl, she was Middle Eastern, she was from Iran. She was like, well, who doesn't like Winnie? Like implying that everyone likes me and there's no reason not to like me. I've also had it where people think I'm in the wrong and am sneaking around or something like that and try to blame me for things. Like, I remember one time, I think this was fifth grade, I was on the school bus coming home and I was sitting next to my friend. She was from India. So she took a permanent marker and she started drawing henna on the back of the school bus seat. So henna is a South Asian, Middle Eastern thing. So anyways, the next day, or something like that, the bus driver pulled us both aside, and I think there was someone else there. So yeah, they were asking about the drawing on the back of the school bus seat. My Indian friend, she was really apologetic. She was like, it was me. I drew the design on the back of the school bus seat. But the bus driver was still, she was like trying to blame me. She was like saying, well, I think she did it. And then, my Indian friend, she's just trying to cover for her. Like she was literally trying to say that. And the bus driver, she was a black lady. And yeah, she saw what my mom looked like. She saw my mom was a white lady. So yeah, I don't know what that was about. Like there was no reason for her to think that. I don't think. I don't know why she thought that, but yeah, I've had that sort of thing happen to me as well. But yeah, that was elementary school. High school felt like it was more isolating for whatever reasons. I felt like it was different. I felt like an outsider. I didn't feel cool. I didn't feel like I fit in with any of the cliques. I was quiet, shy, smart, nerdy. I do remember my demeanor came up a couple of times. Like, I remember in chemistry class, we were paired up for this project, and it was also like a competition thing. So, yeah, I was paired up with this girl. She was white. So, yeah, we were doing the competition, and, we were kicking everyone's bum, basically. So I was like to her, like, hey, we're winning. And she was like, yeah, of course we are. It's me and you. So, yeah, I've had it where people will bring up, like, I seem like really smart and like a genius and stuff like that. So when I was a kid, elementary school, I wasn't shy of my peers at all. I was pretty confident. But I guess starting around middle school and then going into high school, I was definitely more self-conscious. I became more shy. I didn't really socialize a lot with other people in high school or college. I wasn't really around people a lot in high school or college. I didn't have much socialization, basically. College, I mean, it was fine social wise. I kind of just came to terms that I'm the shy, quiet type, and it seemed to work for me. Most of my interactions with other people were on an acquaintance level. Most of my experiences were positive, I would say. I don't really have any experiences that were really negative from that time. I've had people bring up, like, why are you so quiet? Why don't you talk? That sort of thing. It's not that I don't talk. Like, a lot of the time I don't have a lot to say. I'm pretty neutral. I don't want to really get that much involved, and then feel some type of way afterwards. People like to exaggerate with certain people sometimes. Like, people pay extra attention to me for some reason. People like to, kind of like pick on me for some reason. Like, people will like to prod me, like, I used to get like, oh, why are you thin? Or why are you so quiet? But meanwhile, there's other people who are quiet. There's people that are thinner than me, and no one bothers to ask them or prod them about anything. I don't know if I'm more approachable or seem friendly or something like that, or if there's some reason. Like, there was a job that I had. We were doing the trainings, and they were doing that routine to me. And I asked, one of the friends I made there, I was like, how come they're bothering with me? Why aren't they, talking to so-and-so who was really thin, or so-and-so who also is really quiet? And she was like, oh, it's because you're skinny and pretty, So I don't know what it is. Like, I've had people be like, you're quiet, like it's a weird or a bad thing. And, I'll try to like accommodate them and be more talkative, but it's like, I get like the same reaction, like they're kind of looking at me like in a weird way or something like that. So yeah, I just ended up just doing what I feel like, and not getting too involved in that way if I don't feel like it. I'm not really innately shy, but I noticed where people would be negative, and I guess this was starting around like high school. With high school, it was kind of like understandable because it was like people had their cliques, so it was like, why are you trying to, talk to me? I already have my clique. You're not a part of our clique. You don't fit in with us. So it was kind of like that sort of thing. Like, people formed their own cliques and stuff. As an adult, you're in different sort of settings, like, maybe you start a new job, maybe you go to like some sort of like party or something like that, and meet new people, that type of thing. As a teenager, and young adult in college, I did not interact with a lot of people. So for me, I was very shy and I was very scared, and I always felt like I was judged negatively by other people. Like starting high school, I was very shy, because like I was overwhelmed, I guess, because I wanted to fit in. In elementary school, it was simpler. By the time I got to college, though, I pretty much got into a groove as far as my peers. I wouldn't really say I was shy, but it would be like job interviews or, talking in front of people. That's where I would get like over the top nervous, But, I would have situations, not so much in college because, like I said, I pretty much got into a groove by that time, and, a lot of us were some geeks in there anyway, so, you know what I mean? But, like, I would have situations in young adulthood, like going to my jobs and things like that, where I would always view other people normally and positively, but I would have these situations where people would think, oh, she's weird or awkward. And I have noticed a difference with race. Like at one of the first jobs that I had, it was at a call center, and it was in the trainings and everything like that. So yeah, it's just meeting, my new colleagues, making some friends, whatever. So there was this group of white ladies, we were all pretty young in there. They were like in their 20s or whatever. So, they became buddy or whatever. There were some other people in there, and then there was this Indian lady. We kind of like became friends or whatever. So the white ladies, like, they would ask us out sometimes, like, you guys want to come out with us? And the Indian lady, she would sometimes go out with them, but I was like, it wasn't really anything I was interested in, so I don't know. But yeah, I was sitting next to one of the ladies. So yeah, I was sitting next to one of the white ladies in the training class. So yeah, she was like on the shorter side. She was kind of like stocky, like maybe like a bit overweight, something like that. But yeah, and she had like light brown hair, something like that. She just looked like a regular white lady, maybe like she wasn't unattractive or anything like that. Maybe like Britney Spears type of like typical attractive, like white looking woman. But yeah, she was sitting next to me, and she was like asking me intrusive questions. She was like, oh, you're so skinny, what do you eat? And then she's like, what's your race? So it was kind of uncomfortable, but yeah, apparently the Indian lady, she went out with them, like she had a bad experience or something like that, and she's like, they're racist, and they said something to her that she took as racist or something like that, and she's like, oh, they're bitchy, they said this and this about you and all this stuff. So, apparently they were like talking behind my back or something, and I could see that, but yeah, the lady, she could have made it up, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if she did. Maybe she was just trying to cause trouble, but yeah, apparently that happened. That's like the kind of vibe that I was getting from them. Like, I didn't have any issue with them at all, but it was just a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah, so I've had that sort of thing happen. And I've had it where, with black women as well, where they'll think I'm awkward or something like that, but it's more like in a like funny or like giddy sort of way, you know what I mean? Um, like where it seems like it's not really an issue. Whereas with like the white women, it seems like more ominous or something like that. Like there's more of a rivalry. You know what I mean? Um, but I feel like with East Asians, it's pretty much in between. The experiences I've had with white women and black women. Like I remember this other job that I had. Like I had so much going on at the time. Like at lunch break at that job, I would try to like get some rest. I would just like take like a nap in my car. I would try to get some rest in. And there were some Asians that work there, and they were like, "Oh, we thought that you were on a lot of medication or something like that." So, they're trying to say that I was like acting in a kind of loopy way, I guess, but still I felt like it was just like a funny, innocent thing. And, with men it's a little bit different. With Asian men, I feel like I don't get that sense. I feel like we, there's not that type of thing where it's like, oh, you're different, or something like that. Um, with white men, it's more of that type of thing, but not as much as I've had experiences with white women. And I don't know why. With black men, I feel like they're pretty similar to black women, I would say. So, but yeah, that's just something I noticed. Most people, most interactions have been fine. That's just a couple of things, few things that happened here and there. But, it was always the same sort of thing. And, I'd always try to be pleasant, nice, polite, accommodating, but it wouldn't do any good with these sort of people. No matter what I do, I'm going to be judged. No matter what I do, there's going to be people who are going to be negative, going to have issues, going to be difficult. Well, then that doesn't really affect me because it's the same result no matter what I do. So to me, it's always been where I don't really care how I present myself. I just kind of put my needs and myself first. Because before, I would try to please other people and put their needs first, and it didn't work out in any way. People always talk about presentation and first impressions when interacting with other people. Like, if you're going to be negative no matter what I do, then I'm just not going to care after a while. It's like, well, you are a non-factor. No matter what I do, you're going to be a problem. Well, then it's like, what do I care? What am I going to get out of it? If I'm not going to get anything out of it, then I guess your opinion doesn't matter to me. I'd be saying other people's opinions matter, and to me they don't. If they did matter, then most of the time the people I interact with are really no good for me. If I thought they mattered, then I'd probably have a bad view of myself. I probably have, such a bad state for myself right now. That's my own personal strength. I don't really care what other people think. generally, because I'm generally like, they're not going to be that positive generally either way. People like to fill people out. My personal aura is kind of like unusual. It makes people seem a bit uncomfortable, I guess. Like, a lot of the time, I noticed that people want to know you before they actually know you. Because when you are around someone, many of the times they think they know you before they even know you, and make assumptions about you before they even talk to you or ask you any questions. They already think they know you when they never ask the question in the first place. Like, I've had it where I'll be around people, like just meeting them or acquaintances and getting more friendly or whatever. And, they'll start making assumptions like, oh, I bet you like this or this or that or that. I bet you like this. Or why don't you do that? That type of thing. And it's like they'll be, pretty much way off. And then I've also had it where, I'll be like in a group of people, like just meeting, like I haven't even said a word to them. And, to find out, they'll be talking behind your back saying, oh, she's this and that and this and that. And like, I never even spoken to them before. So, I've had that sort of thing happen. Like, starting a new job, training, like I talked about earlier, that sort of situation. I don't really care why someone feels a certain way, honestly. People have their issues with people for whatever reason they have an issue with them. Now, it doesn't have to be my problem unless I want it to be my problem, is how I see it. I don't associate other people's problems with my problems because why would I want other people's problems? That doesn't really make much sense to me, so I don't really know why those people had an issue. It really doesn't matter to me. I think other people's problems are their problems. I don't really need to care about them or focus on them, because if I care about them, then it's my problem. Because to me, it's like, how can you dislike someone without knowing them? How can that be my fault? To me, it's not my fault because you don't even know me. It's your fault for being such a judgmental person. Like, why would I like you when you dislike people that you don't even know? Anyone can present themselves in any type of way. So if you think a first impression is what defines you, then you are a gullible person who gets manipulated by the next person who actually does care about treating you badly or tricking you, and who are not going to have any benefit for you. I have no desire or inclination to use or manipulate people. So to me, it's like, that's not even worth the trouble or effort. To me, it seems like what these type of people want in their lives are people who are going to try to use and manipulate them. Then from my perspective, I don't really wish to have proximity to such individuals who don't seem to respect themselves and don't have good discernment of character. I have improved from when I was younger. I was really shy and like, oh, I can't do this, and really concerned with what I'm saying or doing. I was really shy. Like, when I first came on here, like, I would make the same video over and over again just to put the most perfect video out, and I would look back on the videos I made and I would be like, no, it's just not right. No, it's just not right. I'm not doing it right. I would practice over and over again because I was scared of judgment and criticism and that sort of thing. Now I'm not as concerned, I just do my thing and come across how I come across, I still I want to make a good video and get my points across, but, I'm not as concerned. I don't really rely on people a lot, and that has to do with my experience with many different aspects of life at this point. I don't mind other people, but I don't mind being alone. I don't need other people. I'm fine with normal interactions with people that are positive. I guess these types of things come down to the whole idea of not fitting in and not being accepted. I don't think I ever really related to any of my experiences that way. I always thought, oh, is there something like off with me or wrong about me? I always thought, I kind of thought something like that, but yeah, like I said, I don't really care any longer. I don't look at it that way. But, that's the thing with a lot of people. They don't accept themselves. They need others to accept them, which makes more of a problem because not everyone is going to accept you. So you're going to have a situation where people are going to feel like other people are never enough for them because they don't accept themselves or they don't love themselves. If you accept yourself and you love yourself, you don't search for it from other people because you don't need it when you are already good for yourself. Expecting everyone to accept you and love you is trying to fill a void that you have from not accepting yourself. A lot of people also hold the view that blackness is less than, and that's a thing that a lot of people struggle with within themselves. Like, you'll have people talking down on interracial relationships, like saying that black people are less than and they shouldn't be in interracial relationships. And like, people will have the stereotypical views, like, oh, your black dad left your white mom. And I've seen, like, black women try to put down mixed people that way. Like, they'll be like, oh, you grew up with a single mom without your dad, and like, you have a colorist father, that sort of thing. But it's like, don't you have a black father as well? And doesn't the black community struggle, with single motherhood? You know what I mean? I had someone commenting on my last video about mixed race being superior to black. And they were talking about Indians migrating to the United States, East Indians migrating to the United States and basically dominating. And, this person, the commenter, they were saying that's because of their facial features being more similar to white people, basically. It was because of their facial features. Yeah, you can say the same thing with Nigerians. Nigerians will immigrate here and they'll do way better than the average American. And they're African, obviously, so it doesn't have to do with race or features. There are other factors at play. But yeah, with everything, there's so many different people with different views. So, of course, I experienced negativity. Of course, someone has a negative view on something. What's more important is, what are your views?